Hi and welcome to this tutorial. Today we're going to try creating a lino cut portrait using the work of German Expressionists as inspiration. Expressionism was an early 20th century German art movement that emphasized the artist's inner feelings or ideas over replicating reality. It was characterized by simple shapes, bright colors, and gestural marks or brushstrokes. Erich Heckel, Emil Nold, and others used printmaking as a means for radically simplifying and flattening compositions. Note the strong use of line and the balance between positive and negative space. The first thing I have done is collect some examples from the movement that I like. I can use these as a reference for technique and style. Next, I found a reference photo to base my design on. Here I have a portrait of musician PJ Harvey. I've gone and put the image in the Photos app and cropped it 5x7 as this is also the size of my lino. Trace out the shape of the block you are using. Let's start to render the portrait image. There are a few ways to go about this, but I'm going to draw it by observation by breaking it down into basic shape areas. I'm okay if the proportions are a little off. Looking at the photo in relation to the frame, I mark out where the top of the head is. I then do this for the lowest point of the face. I then look for the edge on the right side and then on the left. I look for the line that is between the eyes and mark this out. I then look for the horizontal line where the eyes are. What I'm doing here is breaking the face down into the main measurements. I then look for the hairline on the forehead and extend this slope that goes towards the ear. I then look at the placement and width of the chin. This then helps find the angle of the jawline. I then look for the ball of the nose, paying attention to the relationship of space between the mouth and how it relates to the eye. I mark out the eye and refine a bit on the nose and nostril. I'll then go to the other eye. I'll lightly render the top curve of the head and then move on to the lips. I'm keeping in mind that my print will not look realistic, but for me, drawing this somewhat naturally at first helps me decide what to simplify later. Once the rendering is complete, I'll then refine a bit by darkening the line work. I add the dark areas, including shadows, as I feel this can help me make the work more expressive. I use an eraser to add some white areas to help break up the black space in the hair. I also add some hatching lines to add more interest and expressionism to the work. I am then going to go over the drawing with ink and a marker. This step is optional, but I feel it helps. When we carve, we are going to cut away everything that is white. Depending on your ability, you may find it difficult to carve smaller areas, but these carved lines can add personality and a quality to your work. In the next chapter, we will go over how to transfer this drawing to the lino block. A faster way to transfer this is to trace the drawing with tracing paper. Use a soft lead such as 2B or higher, meaning 4B or 6B. You don't need to fill in all the black areas, just capture the outlines. It doesn't need to be super precise, as you can refine again once onto the lino. So one thing that confuses people is that the drawing is going to be mirrored, so that when we print it, it will come out the way we see it now. We will flip it over so that the tracing we have just done is sitting face down onto the lino. I align the drawing and tape it down so it doesn't move. I simply then trace over the lines again. Since we used a 2B pencil, the pressure applied to this area will then transfer the lead onto the lino. Our design is mirrored, but when we ink and press it down, it will appear as in the original drawing. Once done tracing, you will see the lead lines on the lino. I like to then go over this with a permanent marker. In the next chapter, we will start carving. So now we're ready to carve our design. You will need a carving tool, and the one I'm using has interchangeable sizes that can be unscrewed and substituted. Naturally, the more narrow, the thinner the curve, which is good for smaller areas. The wider ones can be used for faster carving larger areas. When you carve, the blade is almost perpendicular to the lino block. This is the proper and more efficient way. If you use a stronger angle, you will carve too deep. It will take longer and probably frustrate you. All you are doing is skimming the surface to just reduce contact with the paper. So, we want to carve away whatever is white. I'll start in a large blank area here just to demonstrate for you. You may wish to do the same for practice. Notice how you can carve rather long lines if you do it on the correct angle. So I'm using the thin blade, and I'm going to carve away some of the thin line work that I have. Let's see if I'm able to do it. At times, it may be necessary to adapt your design to the technique and the tool. For safety, always put your free hand behind the carving tool. Otherwise, if it slips, it will slide and stab into the side of your hand. I'm going to proceed carving all the white areas and move the video into time-lapse mode. You will notice that I constantly rotate my lino for comfortable carving. I always carve away from myself. Once I do the thin areas, I will switch blades to a wider one for faster progress. Feel free to pause and start your own. If you wish, jump to the next chapter when you are ready to begin inking. For the inking process, you will need a palette or sheet of plastic and a roller. On this sheet of paper, I have measured and traced where I want the block to appear. I take the block printing ink and apply a small amount on the palette. I take the roller and spread the ink out. We want the ink to be distributed evenly as we will apply it thinly to the block. If you have applied too much, try and squeegee it off to the side to use for later. We then take the roller of ink and apply it to the block. You do not need to press down very hard. Just make sure to go to the edge and properly roll over the entire piece, including the corners. It's good to go in both directions with the roller. You will notice this roller has a little lip area. This allows the roller to be placed on the table without the roller touching and dirtying the surface. Try to keep your hands clean so fingerprints aren't all over your paper. I place my lino on the measured paper I made and then take another piece and align or register the corners to transfer the measurements for the printed paper. Using your fingers, the ball of your hand, or even a large spoon, press and rub down over the lino area. This pressure transfers the ink from the lino to the paper. Make sure you go all the way to the edges and corners to get an even print. Don't pound down on the lino, as this will affect the ink transfer. If you have a spare roller, you can also use this in addition to your hand. Once you feel you have gone across the inked areas, peel your paper off. This is a test print, so you can check if further carving is needed. So I'll do a second pass and ink my lino again, but try a different colored paper. Try experimenting with different colored inks and different colored and types of papers. You could also try offsetting your print by having a lighter color print with an overlapping darker color printed on top, slightly off center. I hope you enjoyed this process. The entire project from drawing to carving to inking took me about 2 hours. Good luck with yours.
Mr. CTV.
Mr. CTV.
Mr. CTV.